Today is Wednesday, August 7th. We're talking about Vice President Harris's new running mate, what he brings to the table, and how the Trump campaign is responding. Also, the FBI says it uncovered a plot to assassinate U.S. government officials. We'll tell you who was behind it. Plus, what you know about whiplash on Wall Street, how high schoolers are now dealing with mental health, and which one of Netflix's hit shows is coming to Broadway. Those stories and even more news to know today, coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Vice President Kamala Harris has made the biggest decision of her presidential campaign so far. She chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz is a former teacher and football coach who served for 24 years in the Army National Guard. He got a start in politics in 2006 by winning a congressional race in a rural, largely conservative district in Minnesota. After 12 years in Congress, he went on to become governor. Many analysts suspect he was chosen, at least in part, because he seems to have an appeal with Midwestern small-town voters. Right away, Harris and Walz made their first appearance together yesterday at a rally in Philadelphia, kicking off their tour of all the battleground states. Harris spoke alongside Walz, calling him a leader who will help unite the nation, a fighter for the middle class, and a patriot who believes in the promise of America. Walz praised Harris right back, saying, quote, "I couldn't be prouder to be on this ticket and to help Vice President Harris become the next president of the United States." When he was in the U.S. House, Walz was considered a moderate and co-sponsored bills with several different Republicans. But as governor, his agenda has been more left-leaning. For example, he signed a law to protect abortion in Minnesota, legalized recreational marijuana, made Minnesota one of 6 states that provides universal free school lunches, proposed an expansion of the child tax credit, and a lot more. The Trump campaign is now calling Walz a dangerously liberal extremist. The former president himself called Harris and Walz the most radical left duo in American history. And Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, says he absolutely wants to debate Walz. So far, the debate has not been scheduled, but it's expected to happen after the Democratic National Convention, which kicks off in less than 2 weeks. A Pakistani man who apparently has ties to Iran is now being accused in an elaborate plot to assassinate American government officials. The U.S. Justice Department says he tried to recruit people in the U.S. to carry out the plot in retaliation for the U.S. killing Iran's top commander, Qasem Soleimani, in 2020. Former President Trump was in the White House at the time and approved the drone strike on Soleimani. So some reports say Trump was brought up as a possible target. In fact, the investigation raised safety concerns about Trump and others even before an unrelated shooting at a Trump rally last month that injured the former president. Authorities say they were able to stop this plot before any violence was attempted, in part because some of the people the suspect allegedly tried to hire were undercover FBI agents. He ended up being arrested as he tried to leave the country. Just last week, the U.S. Attorney General said the Iranians have been persistent about plotting to kill former Trump administration officials and that, quote, "I don't think we've seen the end of this." Hamas has a new political leader to replace the one who was assassinated last week. And this one is said to be even more extreme. The militant group chose Yahya Sinwar, the man Israel accuses of being the architect of the October 7th attack. The U.S. includes Sinwar on its blacklist of international terrorists. Now he's thought to be hiding in a tunnel in Gaza, and his appointment makes a ceasefire deal less likely. Sinwar has resisted pressure to cut a deal and told mediators Palestinian civilian deaths work to his advantage. Israeli officials responded to say his appointment is just another reason to eliminate Hamas for good. To be continued. Well, back in the U.S., what was once Hurricane Debbie in Florida is still wreaking havoc up and down the East Coast. And things could get even worse as the week goes on. The slow-moving storm moved off the Georgia-South Carolina coast yesterday, though it's still bringing heavy rain, flooding, and some tornadoes to people on land. And now in the Atlantic, the storm is actually expected to re-strengthen and come ashore again. Flash flood and evacuation warnings are still in place across Georgia and South Carolina. And officials are telling people to prepare for what could be catastrophic flooding, even in places that have never seen rising water before. Further north, Virginia's governor also declared a state of emergency. And by the end of the week, the storm could bring a flood risk to parts of Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, New Jersey, and southern New England. So meteorologists are asking people on the East Coast to keep their guards up, at least through the weekend. It seems investors are jumping right back into the stock market. Remember we told you about a dramatic sell-off on Monday? Stocks suffered their biggest drop in nearly 2 years, likely in response to a disappointing jobs report last week. Well, all 3 major stock indexes bounced back yesterday. So what changed? Well, several big American companies released some stronger than expected profit reports. There was also some positive data that came out about the U.S. services sector, showing a bounce back in new orders and employment growth. So what now? Well, some analysts say investors probably over-panicked on Monday since it's clear the U.S. economy is still strong and that really there's no need to worry. Though others say the economy will continue to slow down in the second half of the year, so more dips should be expected. Stay tuned. All right, we have more news for you still ahead. But first, a quick break for our sponsor. This episode of The Newsworthy is brought to you by Wild Grain. In recent years, I've found some joy preparing fresh meals for my family and myself at home. But I still don't want to spend all day in the kitchen. I just don't have the time. Now, thanks to Wild Grain, I can save time without skimping on deliciousness. Wild Grain is the first ever bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, fresh pastas, and artisanal pastries. The team at Wild Grain just sent me a box, and there's so much goodness inside. Fresh fettuccine, fresh tonarelli, a beautiful sourdough loaf, croissants, slow-fermented brioche rolls, and more. I can take any of that right from my freezer to my oven, and it's ready in 25 minutes or less. I really appreciate that I can get that homemade taste, quality, and even experience without having to start completely from scratch. My family has loved it as well. Your Wild Grain box, though, is fully customizable, so you can choose any combination of breads, pastas, and pastries that you want. Also, Wild Grain just launched a brand new plant-based box featuring a wide selection of plant-based pastries, breads, and hand-cut pastas. Best of all, for a limited time, you can get $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy to start your subscription. You heard me, free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy. That's wildgrain.com/newsworthy, or you can use our promo code newsworthy at checkout. Now, back to the news. Team USA is now leading the gold medal count at the Paris Olympics. A lot of the momentum is in track and field since yesterday both men's and women's athletes picked up more medals and broke more records. The U.S. women's soccer team also advanced and will now play Brazil for the gold on Saturday. And the U.S. men's basketball team easily moved ahead to play Serbia in the semifinal. Today, expect to see a lot more action in track and field, volleyball, skateboarding, boxing, and more. But it's not clear if more athletes will be able to train or compete in the Seine River. Because of pollution, Olympics organizers canceled training for open water swimming yesterday, making it the 5th time that water quality has forced a session to be called off. Officials are constantly testing the amount of bacteria in that water, and when levels are deemed acceptable, races are allowed to be held. But now there's speculation the Seine may be making some Olympians sick. A couple of triathletes have reported getting stomach infections after competing in the Seine. Though for now, officials say they're not sure if the river is actually to blame. Well, there's some promising news about high schoolers' mental health. The CDC's latest survey got feedback from more than 20,000 teenagers around the country. And it found between 2021 and 2023, the portion of high school students who reported feelings of persistent sadness or hopelessness went from 42% to 40%. Among girls, the percentage fell from 57% to 53%. The share of girls saying they had seriously considered suicide also edged downward. Now, of course, mental health experts say a lot more work needs to be done since the percentages are still higher than they were a decade ago. So they are calling for more resources and providers for kids and teens. They say parents can help too by talking to teens and educating themselves with trustworthy sources. If you or someone you know is in crisis, call 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. For the first time in 40 years, the Environmental Protection Agency issued an emergency order to ban a certain pesticide. It's known as DCPA, and it's been found to cause irreversible damage to unborn babies when a pregnant woman is exposed. Now, to be clear, pregnant farm workers have been at the greatest risk. It was actually first introduced in the 1950s to control weeds, and it's still used often for crops like cotton, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, strawberries, and onions. Well, the EPA says when fetuses are exposed, the pesticide can cause low birth weight, decreased IQ, and impaired motor skills later in life. And while those who work with or around DCPA are most exposed, Advocates say even people who buy produce can be exposed to trace amounts of pesticides, so they say the EPA's decision is long overdue. On the other side, some farms have been against a ban, saying it's an essential tool for controlling weeds and keeping up the supply of affordable, healthy vegetables. Either way, the EPA's ban is effective immediately. Today, Tennessee is becoming the first state in the country to offer free diapers. Families with kids under 2 years old who are enrolled in the state's Medicaid program are eligible. It comes as public health advocates say families are increasingly struggling to afford enough diapers, putting babies at risk of infection and rashes. Similarly, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services approved a pilot program in Delaware that provides free diapers and wipes to parents for the first 3 months after giving birth. And other states have decided to cut sales taxes on diapers. Advocates say they hope to see the effort expand across the country eventually. One of the most popular shows on the small screen is now hoping to be a hit on the big stage. Netflix is bringing Stranger Things to Broadway. The play is called Stranger Things: The First Shadow, and it takes place years before the events in the streaming series unfold. The show actually premiered already at London's West End Theatre a few months ago and got good reviews. So now it's set to make its Broadway debut in the spring of 2025. Netflix actually first started producing for Broadway last season with the play Patriots, and there are now plans for Patriots to be made into a show. All right, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time, and Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Having optimal metabolic health translates into a bunch of benefits, including improved energy levels, better fitness results, and more. I find it especially fascinating because before Lumen, assessing your metabolic health required a lengthy, expensive process. But now you can get all that info in Lumen's handheld device. I'm learning so much about my body and how food affects me. Lumen even gives me a personalized nutrition plan for the day based on my measurements. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/newsworthy to get 15% off your Lumen. That's Lumen, LUMEN.me/newsworthy for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. Business trips are making a comeback. A new report from Deloitte found business travel spending may reach or even top pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year. Some of that increased spending is being driven by higher prices, but trip frequency is also higher than it's been in the last few years. This year, 20% of business travelers expect to take 6 to 10 trips, compared to 15% of business travelers last year. The reason for business travel does seem to be changing, though. Most travelers say they're taking fewer trips to meet with clients or prospective clients since technology has made it easy to do that kind of business remotely. But conferences, trade shows, seminars, and trainings are a big draw, with about 60% of business travelers planning to attend at least one of those this year. Also, corporations are going for fewer long-haul international business trips and are instead prioritizing travel within the U.S. Either way, expect the rebound to continue. Most companies surveyed say they not only plan to increase business travel spending this year, but also next year, too. Well, thank you so much for listening to The Newsworthy today and for spreading the word about the show. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.